Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us from around the world. On behalf of the International Telecommunication Union and the African Telecommunication Union, it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, Scaling Impact, AI-Driven Digital Public Infrastructure for African Cities and Communities. My name is Yining Zhao, Junior Communication Officer at ITU, and I'm honored to serve as your Master of Ceremony for today's webinar. African cities and communities are at a pivotal moment as artificial intelligence rapidly reshapes economics and public services. The question is no longer whether to act, but how to scale impact quickly, responsibly, and inclusively, leaving no one behind. Today, we will explore how AI-driven digital public infrastructure can help unlock more efficient, inclusive, and resilient cities across the African continent. Before we begin today's discussion, I would like to highlight a few housekeeping rules. Throughout the session, all questions from the audience will be taken during the Q&A. Please submit your questions through the Q&A window, which you can access via the icon at the bottom of your screen. Please also note that this session is being recorded, and the recording and presentation materials will be made available on the event webpage shortly after the webinar concludes. So to officially open today's webinar, we are honored to hear from our distinguished speakers. First, it's my pleasure to invite Mr. John Allman, Secretary General of the African Telecommunications Union, to share his opening remarks. Mr. Allman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you indeed very much, Madam. Just confirm you are hearing me again?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you very much. Let me start by recognizing the Director of the Standardization Bureau, Seizo Noe. Good seeing you just after 2 weeks when we met in Ghana for the African preparatory meeting for WTSCA. Let me also recognize Dr. Manasseh. I have missed you. I have missed you, brother. But good to see you here, the Africa ITU Regional Director for Africa. Dr. Rami Ahmed Fati, I don't know what to say of you, but You're one person who makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you very much for being here as the chair of ITU Study Group 20 regional group for Africa. Dr. Onoe joined us 2 weeks ago for the other two regional groups that we have for the continent. Let me also recognize industry leaders, innovators, and tech experts. It's certainly quite a pleasure for me to welcome you to this session. On behalf of the African Telecommunications Union, I do appreciate the ITU for continued partnership, especially on matters of mutual concern. This very conversation on AI-ready public infrastructure has become quite a serious subject of pursuit for many leaders and thinkers who have tomorrow in mind. And I'm therefore happy to be part of that group that shares the mindset and knows what to do about it today. The African cities and communities are living through a period of fast and visible change, whether it's in Cairo or Johannesburg or Djibouti or Dakar. By 2050, the continent is expected to add more than 700 million new city dwellers, and Africa's urban population projected to reach roughly 1.3 billion. And that's a pointer to the potential pressure that we will put on our transport, on land administration, on sanitation, and public safety, including issues of public health, and will affect quite a bit of how our municipalities, our cities expend on this. That also means that public systems now have to work with greater speed, better coordination, and much sharper use of data. That's why digital public infrastructure deserves serious attention. At its simplest, it gives us the basic digital rails on which public services can run well. The World Bank, for example, speaks of foundational systems built for the public good, and UNDP points to the same foundations in terms of digital identity, payments, and data exchange. And when those pieces are put in place and work well together, cities and communities begin to connect, institutions begin to work with greater continuity, and people find it easier to move from one public service to the other without meeting a different system at every turn. Africa already has one powerful lesson in scale. Just 2 years ago in 2024, mobile money systems processed about 108 billion transactions, 108 billion transactions. And that was worth more than close to 1.7 trillion US dollars. Mind-boggling. It should even be higher today, given we are dealing with figures that were researched on 2 years ago. That kind of reach grew because a digital system answered a daily need in a way that people could trust and use. The same lesson should guide public infrastructure when the foundations are useful, affordable, simple to access, and adoption will easily follow. At the same time, the continent does carry certain digital gaps that are worth mentioning. ITU data show that mobile broadband cover 86% of our population, yet only 38% use the internet, which brings the question that it is not simply whether digital infrastructure exists, but whether it is reaching people in a form that they can actually use and trust. It is as such undeniable that once the public digital foundation is in place, intelligence can help make services more timely, more relevant, and far more workable in daily life. Broadly speaking, we have the opportunity to give life to policy instruments that are part of the process and that underpin them. Recent Africa-wide tracking by the African AI Governance Index shows us that as of April 2026, 22 of Africa's 50 4 countries had published national artificial intelligence strategies, with a further 21 in the drafting stage. A couple of weeks ago, a number of, or nearly 3 countries joined this bandwagon. But it points nonetheless to a fast-growing continental policy landscape, particularly after the African Union's Continental Artificial Intelligence Strategy, endorsed by the African ICT and Communications Minister some 2 or so years ago. What that means is that the interest is growing, and the next task is for us as leaders to head towards dependable public systems. 3 areas deserve close attention as that work moves forward fast. Is the interoperability, so that systems can connect seamlessly and serve people without duplication, dead ends, and expensive redesign. The second is, of course, issues of data governance, so that public trust is protected from the start and African data can be used responsibly to solve African problems. And third, and by no means least, is the institutional capacity, especially at city and community levels where digital transformation succeeds or fails in the everyday experience of our public. To the policymakers with us today, I'm happy to use this opportunity to remind us that we must set conditions that help good systems grow responsibly. To the innovators and technical experts, this is the time to build with public purpose in mind, close to the realities of our cities and communities. To our development and industry partners, this is the time to back solutions that are open, practical, and capable of scale. The ATU remains an open partner in that pursuit, and we are committed to coordinating these efforts in our continent. Our goal is a connected, inclusive, and digitally transformed Africa where no city or no community is left behind. I look forward to the rich engagements that we will have from our panelists, from the questions and comments that you'll have, and do hope that this session leaves us with a firmer commitment of the sense of what implementation should look like. Thank you very much for listening to me. Over to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Secretary General Omo, for those very inspiring and thoughtful opening remarks and for setting the stage for today's discussion. We will now hear a video message from Mr. Seizo Onoe, the Director of ITU Telecommunication Standardization Bureau.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all. Let me start by thanking ATU Secretary General John Omo for working with us to arrange today's webinar. We highly appreciate your support. I also thank our speakers and moderators and everyone online for your contributions to this important discussion. Digital Public Infrastructure, DPI, is an essential foundation for our future. That's well recognized by the global ITU membership. In 2024, our members reinforced our mandate on DPI with a new resolution at the Governing Conference for ITU Standards Work. We are defining technical requirements, developing standards, and helping to build capacity around the world. DPI provides a platform for more innovation and growth. With clear vision and strategy, all countries can create the conditions to scale up DPI and, as a result, scale up public services, financial inclusion, healthcare, education, and so much more. Public-private collaboration is key to DPI, making ITU a good venue to drive global progress. That's why this webinar follows a meeting of the African Regional Group within ITU-T Study Group 20, our expert group for smart cities, digital twins, and the Internet of Things. Government, companies, and universities are working together on ITU standards for DPI. We also support countries around the world with open source components for AI and DPI. With AI-ready DPI, countries can create enabling environments for homegrown innovation, datasets, and AI capabilities. ITU is here to support you. I look forward to our continued work together on the required standards, capacity, and skills. I also look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time at UN Virtual World Day, organized by ITU with over 20 UN partners. We will explore AI, spatial intelligence, and CBAS with a strong focus on applications for DPI and public services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Onoi, for sharing this video message with us today. We will now move to our session on AI-driven DPI in Africa, advancing through standards, interoperability, and collaboration. To lead our main session, I'm pleased to hand over to Mr. Isaac Boyton, Standardization Coordinator at the African Telecommunications Union. Isaac, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Yenen. Good morning, good afternoon, or I'll say good evening once again, dear colleagues, distinguished participants. It is actually my pleasure to moderate today's session. As a matter of fact, I have to say we are here to move the conversation forward, just as the SecGen has said and the TSB director has also said, from ambition to architecture and also from pilot to policy, and from discussions to implementation or delivery. This session will actually focus on 4 interconnected themes. The first one is on building AI-ready public infrastructure that delivers real outcome for the people. 2, avoiding the fragmentation and vendor locked-in through open interoperable approaches. 3, translating standard into practice and learning from live or use cases across the African continent. We are delighted to have with us 4 experienced and outstanding speakers who will share their experiences from across different regions and different sectors. And so allow me to start with our first speaker, Dr. Rami Ahmed Fati, my dear friend. Dr. Rami is the chair of the ITU Study Group 20 Regional Group for Africa, the chair of the United for Sustainable Smart City Thematic Group on Digital Public Infrastructure, and the chief of International Cybersecurity of National Telecom Regulatory Authority of Egypt. With over 20 years of experience across data transformation, cybersecurity and regulations, and international standards, he has played a leading role in advancing and secure trusted data infrastructure in Egypt and across the region. Dr. Rami, please, the floor is yours.
Dear friend and colleague, Mr. Isaac, and allow me to express my sincere appreciation to the whole group, to the whole regional group.
Dr. Rami, please, we have a bit of challenge with your connection. If you can reposition yourself. Or am I the only one having this? Yenen, can you hear Dr. Rami clearly?
Isaac,
No,
we
not
have
at
the
all.
same issue.
Hello, Dr. Rami, please, are you with us?
Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yeah, let's try again. Yes, it's okay now. Please proceed.
Okay, excellent, excellent. As I said, I was thanking you, thanking our dear delegations from the African Group, the Regional Group Africa membership, as well as recognizing and appreciating the interventions of my dear friend and colleague, Mr. John Omo, the Secretary General of the African Telecommunications Union, and Mr. Cizo Honore-san, the Director of the TSB, the Telecommunication Standardization Bureau of the ITU. So today we are engaging in a very important topic, and that's, of course, digital public infrastructure for cities, and in particular within the African perspective. And there is a very important and perhaps subtle point here that that this particular session is currently focusing, and that's the AI-driven perspective. And as you know, that AI now is being considered very fundamental and a core pillar of almost every digital services that are currently being provisioned, whether in our smart city infrastructure, within our telecom infrastructure. It has many implications in terms of interoperability requirements, security, safety, and most recently as well, privacy-related issues. So with digital public infrastructure, the typical infrastructure guardrails or rails that needs to be there in order to ensure that we have a sustainable digital transformation at scale at the city level. There's a slight perspective change that needs to be done and embraced, and this is exactly what we would try to underline or underscore here in this session. Next slide, please. Yeah, so where are we? And why the point of DPI for cities is peculiar and important. First, cities are undergoing rapid digital and urban transformation. And this particular transformation is being driven by two facts. First, the rate of urbanization is expanding as we speak. I mean, today we are witnessing a migration into smart, sustainable cities in many countries now. I believe every country within the Union, every member state, every jurisdiction, every country has at least one or more digital smart city, smart, sustainable cities project. The rise of digital transformation within the urban context is extremely being recognized by top and world leaders as we speak. And this particular urbanization adds to the existing pressures in our urban infrastructure. We're talking about a rise of demand on the housing infrastructure, the utilities, the infrastructure of the cities are witnessing a foundational transformation that needs to be taken care of at the very start of your digital transformation journey. And the second major driver is the technological advancements as we speak that are currently being integrated, as I said, in every digital transformation strategy, in every digital service that you are currently delivering. We are seeing expansions in terms of higher connectivity needs, more demands on speeds, data rates. But yet again, not only data rates and connectivity, we are also seeing a rise in critical, we call it critical applications or time-sensitive applications or time-sensitive networks. And of course, that combined with the rise of Internet of Things and massive broadband connectivity adds to the pressures on the type or typical type of infrastructure needs that needs to be there in order to ensure that you have a sustainable digital transformation at scale. So this is one important point. The second point is DPI as expressed very clearly by John Omo and Cizo Honore-san, is that it is considered as a foundational enabler for equitable, efficient, and resilient urban development. And DPI in itself is not a technological innovation in itself alone. It's actually a governance and a policy imperative. It has many implications on transparency, accountability, inclusion, and innovation. And the concept itself needs to be embraced from two perspectives, from a top-down approach, from a top-down perspective, and from a bottom-up perspective. Next slide, please. The Africans' urban context is shifting as we speak. We still have systematic connectivity gaps in different parts of the continent, typical affordability barriers in some regions, and uneven digital capacity still hinder equitable digital transformation in every part or in every location in the continent. We still suffer from some fragmented systems which undermine coordination, trust, and scale for the digital transformation initiative you're trying to adopt. And this makes interoperability a strategic imperative. And digital public infrastructure, if implemented carefully and wisely, taking into consideration the city needs, again, the bottom-up perspective rather than a mere top-down approach. So those two perspectives, if combined strategically, would help the countries and the cities leapfrog the DPI implementation strategy. And in such a case, if basing your implementation on a standards-based implementation, adopting a standards-based approach, we believe that you would be in a better position to achieve a DPI that is trustworthy, that is inclusive, and ready for future scale. Next slide, please. So why does it matter? Why does DPI matter? First, DPI promises three key ideas. It promises trust, inclusion, and efficiency. And why is that? Imagine a situation, in the past, typical digital transformation journey started by a complete system analysis, business requirements first. You analyze the user needs, and then you start developing your digital systems by identifying the key requirements, the technological architecture needed in order to satisfy the user requirements, and then you start your implementation. As time passes, it was evident that different departmental vertical segments inside the single country, inside the single, under the same government, had repetitive and inefficient deployments for the same technological stack. For example, take the health vertical segment. The health officials started by identifying the key assets that needs to be automated. Basically, every user of the system needed some form of an identification scheme, an authentication system that needs to be put in place, migration for legacy systems and legacy accounts that were distributed in different governmental bureaus. You start a very significant, extensive, and expensive data migration plan. You develop a unified database, perhaps using either a proprietary, or if you're lucky enough, you would end up with a solid data schema that can be applicable across the different departments in the health ecosystem. Yet, if you take a closer look at another segment within the same government, say the transportation segment, you would be surprised to find out that the same exercise nearly repeats itself in different parts of the government. The same exercise in the transportation sector, however, it uses a different type of jargon. It uses, but the process is the same. But you end up spending a significant amount of investments more than if you planned the whole exercise on the overall government from the from the beginning. And that is the philosophy of digital public infrastructure. Instead of repeating the whole cycle again and again and again, you focus on the core and common key components of your digital infrastructure. What is the digital foundation that needs to be there, that can be used by multiple vertical segments in an interoperable, safe, trustworthy way? And this is exactly the philosophy behind it. So DPI promotes transparency, inclusion, accountability, and innovation. It allows you to boost civic participation through digital engagement platforms. It enables real-time urban management through integration with digital twins, data analytics, and IoT. It improves access to health, education, and financial services. The whole philosophy is by combining proper governance, proper policies, and reusable, shareable, open digital components. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every time you introduce this digital transformation in a particular vertical segment of your government. Next slide, please. And for all that to happen, you need standards. You need standards that works on the data layer, that works on the infrastructure layer, that works on the sensory fusion layer, that works on the cybersecurity layer. You need standards that works at every part of your protocol chain, of every part of your stack. And this is exactly what the ITU, in collaboration with the African Telecommunication Union, has been trying to achieve. The ITU, and in particular Study Group 20, focuses on developing standards, we call it recommendations in the ITU language, to develop recommendations in the IoT, digital twins, and smart and sustainable cities and community sphere. And you will notice that we have been working now for almost a decade, focusing on Internet of Things and digital services, sustainability aspects, smart, sustainable cities and communities, including energy management and digital twins. Digital agriculture has been core of our recent activities over the past few years. We have also established a new question focusing on digital agriculture, digital health-related matters, including IoT and sustainability issues, AI and Cityverse. We are also active on the regional front through our regional group for Africa, Study Group 20 regional group for Africa. The purpose of this particular regional group is to bring African perspectives, bring experts focusing on the African level, focusing on the African priorities, capacity building and collaboration at the African front, working with industry and also academia, focusing on the African priorities. The target is to bridge the standardization gap between what is currently being promoted and developed in the industry out large and the African communities, especially the startups communities and the entrepreneurship. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks in Geneva, over a period of around 10 days or more. And I believe the foundations and the recommendations and standards that are currently being developed in Study Group 20 complements our regional efforts to try to develop synergies between the African and international front. Next slide, please. The ITU, together with leading UN agencies interested in driving the sustainable development, sustainable digital transformation agenda, has been active on a very important initiative. It's called the United for Smart and Sustainable Cities Initiative. It's a UN platform coordinated by ITU, UNECE, and UN Habitat, and it is currently supported by 20 UN partners. Imagine every UN agency interested in driving the sustainable smart cities agenda. It's a very important initiative. It has access to more than 300 cities from different regions, from all different regions. It focuses on key aspects that is important for driving the smart sustainable cities agenda. We're talking about people centricity, AI in cities, digital public infrastructure for cities, city platforms and data spaces, social, cultural sustainability in people-centered cities, sustainable digital transformation in buildings and urban cities, future foresights for cities. So this is a platform, a unique platform that combines the UN perspective that, of course, coming from the 20 UN agencies that support the initiative, and the cities themselves. So it's a platform that combines NGOs, UN agencies, cities, city stakeholders, companies. Everyone is sitting together inside thematic groups, driving, exploring, investigating policies, strategies, technologies that would help cities achieve their digital transformation agendas. So it's a very important initiative, and many of the work that is currently also being developed by the U4SSC is being standardized by the ITU and by other agencies as well, driving the initiative. Of course, each within its own perspective and mandate. So we invite all of you to participate in our initiative. Currently, I'm humbled to lead a very important thematic group, which is DPI for Cities. The work is being divided into several working groups. We're talking about investigating the regulatory frameworks and policies and strategies important to develop the DPI for Cities initiatives in the cities. We are investigating the important specifications and technological infrastructure requirements that needs to be there in order to allow for safe and inclusive DPI for cities at, of course, at the different perspectives, or taking into consideration the 20 UN perspective. We're also investigating cybersecurity for DPI for cities. We're tackling toolkits, developing toolkits, and the socio-economic perspectives and aspects for DPI for cities. Next slide, please. We managed to develop the first international strategic framework for city leaders, officials, and ministers and policymakers, which tackles DPI for cities. It has been published and approved by the 20 UN agencies driving the initiative. What is important is that it placed the initiative and the U4SSC initiative as the key instrument that would allow us to institutionalize DPI as recognized by the Pact for the Future and the Global Digital Compact at scale, at the city level at scale. So the Pact for the Future and the Global Digital Compact advocates for a free, secure, and human-centered future, and it recognizes DPI as a global public good. And the U4SSC, this particular initiative, is considered as one key instrument that would allow the Pact for the Future vision for DPI to get executed at the city level. Next slide, please. The U4SSC DPI framework introduces a roadmap for city leaders. It focuses or introduces four key benefits, four key tangible benefits for city leaders if they followed our recipe developed by this particular framework. So first, service access and equity. DPI makes essential services accessible to all residents. It ensures that no one is left behind in the digital transformation journey. And how that is done is specifically done by embracing the key advices and recommendations available in our report. It promises efficient and responsive governance. By integrating data and services across departments, the DPI enables real-time decision-making and a faster service delivery for all government-led services. It introduces resilience and trust at the core of your digital infrastructure. By developing secure, interoperable, and transparent DPI-related components, we're talking about digital identities, digital payment, data exchange, and most recently we have recognized AI-driven platforms as well. You are able to develop a resilient and trustworthy infrastructure that would allow your city services to scale. If you implemented DPI framework, including all the policies that would allow for your digital innovation to flourish, and that, of course, by enabling the companies, the third-party companies, by enabling the proper touch points for your DPI components, for your DPI basic foundational components. If you opened up your DPI components to third parties, to universities in a safe, secured, and sustainable manner, you would be able to reap from the benefits of your open ecosystem, creating data ecosystems, public-private collaboration opportunities, and hence you would be contributing sustainably to your GDP. And of course, this is imperative in order to have a sustainable economic empowerment for your society. Next slide, please. DPI delivers efficiency and responsiveness at your city services and city operation infrastructure elements. Of course, by developing DPI properly, making use of open source and open touch points, using trusted APIs to the building blocks of your digital transformation architecture, you would bring efficiency and responsiveness to your smart city infrastructure. And of course, the question pops into your mind. Now there are many APIs and API systems and API standards out there that promise the same thing. So the question is, how are you going to choose your interfaces properly? How are you going to architect your data properly in order to achieve all those efficiency gains? And to answer this question, you need to focus clearly on your inclusion and equity imperative. You need to have transparency and trust policies. You need to focus on how are you going to bring innovation and growth into your ecosystem, and to have resilience and sustainability at the core of your work. Next slide, please. DPI in action, we have multiple success stories in Africa. For example, Kenya M-Pesa platform achieved 85% internet penetration rate by 2023, and it is considered the mobile platform that enabled inclusive real-time digital financial services at a national scale. It was one of its kind. In Rwanda, the Irembo platform, which is the official digital platform for accessing over 100 governmental services online, was a very successful example of how providing access to your government services enabled innovation to scale. In Egypt, InstaPay, the instant payment network, which actually now holds more than 90 million financial and non-financial transactions within the first quarter of a particular year, is an example of how digital inclusion enabled by digital payment platforms is a catalyst for further digital innovation and digital growth for all sectors of your digital transformation services in your digital government initiative. In Nigeria, the National Digital Identity Initiative was again a very important example of how digital ID systems, foundational as they are in enabling broader access to services, finance, and social protection services. Next slide, please.
Doc, you have the next 3 minutes.
1 minute.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
The challenges that we need to cover or that we need to address are immense. DPI is only successful if we manage to address 5 key systematic set of challenges that are currently are considered critical in your DPI transformation journey. First, the accessibility and digital inclusion. The digital divides in terms of, for example, language, infrastructure, etc., still persists, and excluding certain groups or certain communities would make your whole DPI transformation strategy very challenging. The solution to that is to promote universal connectivity, universal design, and inclusive design. Governance and institutional fragmentation is still a little bit challenging. By integrating national and local strategies, ensuring equal participation and data protection frameworks, that is your way out. Funding constraints is still an issue. Public-private partnerships, PPP contracts, if they have been introduced in a less complex manner, I think that's also a very important instrument that would ensure long-term value. Legacy systems still is of extreme importance. It needs to be improved, retrofitted, and by embracing open standards to modernize and improve scalability and cost efficiency, that's your way out. The vendor lock-in problem, again, is still one chronic and important issue, and you need to promote open standards, open source in your interoperability requirements in your procurement. And of course, you need to add interoperability requirements in your procurement specifications. Next slide, please. Policy recommendations, you need to develop integrated DPI strategy, invest in inclusive, scalable, interoperable infrastructure, promote human rights and digital trust, strengthen public-private partnerships and innovation ecosystem, develop an enabling regulatory and business-friendly environment, and measure impact and share best practices. And I will end here. Next slide. You can contact us, of course, by sending an email to me or to the Secretariat. In conclusion, DPI must be interoperable by design. International standards are critical. Africa can leapfrog legacy models through inclusive and people-centered digital foundations, and African participation in standardization is a must. And initiatives and activities that includes participation in A2 and Regional Group Africa for Study Group 20 is indeed our efforts in order to bridge standardization gap. Over to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Doc. A very insightful presentation, opening the discussions, this discussion for us, AI-driven DPI standardization, DPI work. And you started by indicating where we are and why we are the rate of the issues of the rate of urbanization, the rise of the data transformation and emerging technologies. Then you also talked about the challenges, the DPI challenges and opportunities, of course, that they present. You focus as well on the work that is happening in ITU Study Group 20 and the use cases that have been provided and some recommendations, policy recommendations for our policy folks. Thank you very much, Doc. And we will keep our questions and answers. I've seen some questions coming in, but we'll keep them in the interest of time and move to the next presenter straight away. The next presenter is Mr. Soheeb Nonchad. So it is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Soheeb Nonchad. He's a senior policy manager for DPI at GSMA, where he focuses on the role of mobile industry in advancing interoperable data identity, data payment, and data exchange systems at scale. Please come through, Mr. Nonchad. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isaac, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Soheeb Nonchad. I'm the DPI lead at the GSMA, working very closely with mobile network operators, MNOs globally, as well as partners across the DPI ecosystem. Today, I'd like to share how the mobile industry is observing a growing convergence between artificial intelligence and digital public infrastructure, and what does this all mean for scaling innovation across African cities and communities. So Africa stands at an inflection point. On one hand, we have seen mobile connectivity reaching scale. Around 84% of adults in low and middle income countries now own a mobile phone, which forms the very backbone for digital service delivery. And at the same time, we're also seeing some declining AI inference costs and increasing availability of locally relevant data, which create altogether a real opportunity to leapfrog traditional infrastructure, as both the moderator and the previous speaker has mentioned. And at the same time, we've also seen countries across Africa actively deploying DPI systems, particularly in areas such as digital identity, fast payments, and data exchange systems. But the challenge is really no longer building those systems. It's really more about operating them sustainably, securely, and at population scale. So I really value, again, the ITU for inviting me to this webinar, because this is a timely conversation. Not because we're asking whether AI can deliver value, but because now we're confronting with a more fundamental question, which is how do we move from isolated AI use cases to more real population scale impacts? And increasingly, we will realize that the answer lies in how AI and DPI are actually designed to work together, but we need to uncouple that answer in different layers. So let's proceed and let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So let me start my intervention with a simple but critical message. AI does not scale on its own. We tend to focus a lot on AI algorithms and models, but the real constraint is not about intelligence itself. It's more about what do we do with it and for what purpose, especially towards our ability to operate across different systems at, again, population scale. And this is where DPI comes in, as it provides the foundational layers that are really needed to scale. So you have digital identity, so you can securely authenticate and know who you're serving or providing a service, both on the public or the private sector. You have payments, of course, so you can deliver value instantly and efficiently. And then you have data exchange. So the systems can actually talk to each other and that create usable, high-quality data flows, which matter not only at a national level, but also much more strategically important before considering cross-border case studies, which is very much a priority within the African continent. And as we can see, both of these systems do not operate in isolation when you think of it. And this is actually illustrated from this image here, which is the DPI AI framework that is developed by CDPI, the Center for Digital Public Infrastructure, to which I highly recommend to our audience to read this publication very closely. And within this foundational DPI framework, you see that AI would remain fragmented and locked in silos. And more importantly, DPI does not function again in isolation. And if we were to add an AI component, this would only reinforce that cycle. Whereas here, I'm taking this opportunity to highlight one key element because it constitutes the critical execution layer of that vision between DPI and AI, and that is mobile networks. Mobile networks already reach the vast majority of the population. 84% of adults today in LMICs own a mobile phone, and most of these are smartphones. And according to our intelligence, whilst more than 400 million people in Africa are now using mobile internet, we have almost 75% of the population that remains unconnected. 960 million people in Africa, which means 64% of the population are not using mobile internet, despite living in an area where coverage is available. And so from these numbers alone, we can understand something that is fundamentally critical. Coverage does not mean meaningful usage. A significant usage gap remains with billions worldwide who still are unconnected or underconnected. And so we must appreciate that this is not just a connectivity issue, it's a multidimensional systemic issue. It's about affordability of handsets, it's about affordability of data. It could be about digital skills, gender, trust, or the ability to deliver the very services that people actually use on the ground. All of these pain points that I just mentioned reflect some priority policy areas for the successful adoption of both DPI and AI by extent. And this is where the combination of artificial intelligence, of digital public infrastructures, and mobile networks becomes very powerful. And this is something that I will echo throughout this presentation. AI can generate insights and intelligence. DPI enables those systems to act on said insights and intelligence, and then mobile networks ensure that the services can reach people reliably, securely, and at scale. So the takeaway here is pretty much straightforward. Without interoperability, without connectivity, you don't have DPI. And without DPI, AI cannot scale and therefore deliver real impact at scale. So let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So with that being said in mind, what does this actually look in practice? So let me try to bring this to life with a couple of examples in different areas. So let me start with social protection. Anybody remembers COVID-19? Well, if so, you might recall how many governments faced a fundamental challenge to disperse social aid in emergency contexts. Yet they did not know exactly who was eligible or who to target or how to reach them effectively. Many of these G2P payment programs throughout African countries such as Nigeria, Togo, or Uganda effectively leverage mobile money and MNOs by extent, so to ensure that the right person was actively supported. Now, if we move this past COVID-19, we're seeing some cases to which AI can actually augment verifiable identification and by extent reduce fraud. So AI in this very example can help better identify who is in the most in need, but it is actually DPI, in this case, again, this holy trinity of identity, payments, and data that ensures support that actually reaches the people who need it the most. And this is precisely the difference between insight and impact. Now, moving on another example, on the case of digital payments, we have seen in the previous presentation about real-time payment infrastructure and this time that are being developed all across the region that enables instant, interoperable transactions across banks, wallets, including mobile money, and users. And this, to some extent, creates the foundation of a digital economy. But it is precisely on top of that that you have AI that can enhance some services, such as on fraud detection, on credit scoring, on personalized financial products, all of which contributing to end users' financial health on the long term. But it's important to remember this. These services can only scale because of the underlying infrastructure that exists in the first place. So the real transformation power in this example is this. Payments on a general basis are no longer just mere transactions from point A to point B. They become a very platform for economic activity and therefore innovation. Now, finally, if we then consider the case of public health, more of the sectoral DPI case study, right? AI can analyze data and predict disease outbreaks through models, but prediction alone does not save lives. What DPI can do in this very case is the actual ability to act on that insight, to identify affected populations, to coordinate responses across different sectors, and deliver services where they are the most needed. In the case of Mozambique, we see some digital systems being used to support malaria response, interlinking data, coordinating service delivery across different actors and sectors. Without that infrastructure, AI in this very case would remain just a dashboard. But with it, it becomes a tool for real-world intervention. So across all of these examples that I'm just showing you here today, we see a consistent pattern. We have, again, AI generating insight, but without identity, payments, and the interoperability aspect of DPI systems, those insights cannot translate into real-world impact. So this is why DPI is not just complementary to AI, it is foundational to scaling it in the first place. Now, if AI and DPI together can actually deliver this kind of impact, the question then is, why don't we see this consistently at scale? Well, the answer is not technology. It's a lot more nuanced than that. It's about the missing piece. It's, again, how those systems are designed, governed, and sustained over time. Let's go to the next slide, please. So let me be very clear. DPI itself does not struggle because of lack of ambition. It actually struggles, or often struggles, because of some legacy influences which are no longer compatible with this kind of digital transformation. Too many DPI initiatives as of today are still approached as public sector IT projects. Now, what does that translate this into? That means legacy procurement models, short-term financing cycles, metrics too focused on capital expenditure instead of operational expenditures, so that we better understand the pain points that remain accounted for, and of course, the policies that were not designed for a dynamic multi-actor system governance. We can't think of legacy systems without the legacy policies that enable these in the first place. And as a result, the private sector, especially mobile operators, is often brought in too late, and then some key design decisions have already been made. At the same time, you also have some roles and incentives that remain unclear as to who invests, who operates, and who is accountable over time. And critically, this is again like a layer of that complexity. How are these systems actually sustained financially? Because without viable cost recovery mechanisms, even the most well-designed systems may struggle over time either to scale or to remain operational. And so to better understand the concept of those unspoken trade-offs within DPI, there's a paper that I'd like to recommend the audience to check out from the Center for Financial Inclusions on what are the unspoken trade-offs within digital public infrastructure. But then from there, what does this actually mean in practice? It means we need a fundamental shift as to how we think and do about DPI. We don't have to think about DPI just as infrastructure, but think of it as a market-enabling platform where you can have multiple actors that can participate. You can have roles that are better and clearly defined, and incentives that are better aligned, and, well, accountability built into the system so that it can enable multidimensional trust, especially for end users, and so on and so forth, to ensure consumer protection, as an example. And this is really the basis that can enable, at some extent, sustainable public-private partnerships. And this is, again, an area where mobile operators can play a critical role, not just when it comes to provide connectivity, but really as an ecosystem partner, contributing to the design, supporting governance, enabling interoperability through standards, and delivering affordable services at scale. But this only works if they are included from the start, not at the end, because ultimately scaling digital public infrastructure isn't a technology challenge. It is an ecosystem design challenge. If we get the ecosystem correctly, then we have more and more opportunities for AI and DPI together, moving beyond pilots and deliver more sustainable population scale impact. Let's go to the last slide, please. Thank you. So I have three practical and concrete priorities in order to scale AI-driven DPI. The first is really to think about designing for scale and reuse from the start. And this is where the I in DPI takes its importance. It is long-term infrastructure. It's not a project. That means the investments and the financing must be strategic and not short-term so that we achieve a bit more clarity on its financial sustainability. It also means designing systems that are more modular and interoperable from the get-go, from day one. Again, fragmentation is not a technical issue. It is a design failure. And once silos are built in, they are very extremely difficult to undo or to remove. The second call to action is when it comes to integrating AI and DPI together. Too often, we see AI being added on top of existing systems. But as we've seen from the case studies, the real impact comes in when AI and DPI are designed together from the outset. And this is where, again, the DPI approach, as we're getting to the next level of DPI services, can be reinforced. Because we need to start small, we iterate, and from there you build the confidence of the user and all the parties that are participating, but that also leaves a clear pathway towards scale and resilience for those systems. The third call to action that I'd like to leave with the audience is on enabling public-private ecosystems, not just partnerships. The private sector is, again, not one actor. It is an ecosystem, and there are many benefits in appreciating its diversity. Entrepreneurs, startups, scale-ups, small and medium enterprises, industries, big tech, and so on and so forth. It is a tapestry, really, of multiple colors, shapes, and forms. And the mobile industry is extremely well positioned within it because of its extensive experience and assets. Again, providing connectivity, understanding when it comes to managing digital infrastructure, enabling authentication and payments, and supporting service delivery at scale. And this has been the case for years. But again, this only works if the private sector is engaged early as a partner in design and governance, and not just when it comes to implementation. At the same time, you also see the need for AI ecosystems to be built locally when it comes to talent, when it comes to data, models, and governance, so that Africa's AI future is actually shaped by Africans and not just made for Africans. And this requires a mindset of continuous learning because these systems evolve, and so must the way we govern them. Why do I say that? Because I'll give you two examples or three: fraud, scams that will continue to rise, and cybersecurity that should be a shared responsibility when it comes to citizens and consumer protection. If DPI is built in a fragmented or vendor-locked way, innovation will slow, exclusion will deepen, and Africa risks becoming a market for AI and DPI rather than being a maker of it. But the opportunity is perfectly clear. Take this into perspective. Africa itself has over 1.4 billion people, with half of the population under 25. And so that means we have a generation that expects digital services by default. Health advice on their phone, access to credit, better climate smart services at their fingertips. And ultimately, AI-driven DPI should not be a luxury. It should be the very backbone of more inclusive and responsive governance. And so my final message is this for this webinar. AI can generate intelligence, DPI can enable execution, but only well-designed ecosystem can sustain impact at scale. If we get this right, then Africa doesn't just adopt AI and DPI, but it helps define how both AI and DPI systems can better serve their own societies. So thank you for your time, and back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Sohib, excellent present. I will summarize your presenting papers. So you made us know, I mean, the current situation, what the gap is, the gap analysis, and then you have provided the way forward in terms of the call to action. Thank you very much. We will look at this again, a very interesting perspective, and then we will try as much as possible as ITU work with you on some of the proposed recommendations that we've made. Thank you. Thank you. Let me move straight to the next presenter. I have the next speaker is Juan Olushola Martins from the Technology Innovation Office at the World Bank. Juan, in the interest of time, I would like to ask that you do the presentation. I wouldn't want to go through your profile. Let's do the presentation. When there's more time, then we can come back to your profile. Please, you have the floor.
No problem. Hi, everyone. So, hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's lovely to meet everyone, and thanks for the ITU and the ATU for putting this community together. Today, I want to share what we are seeing at the World Bank and what we are building and what we believe Africa can do next with AI-driven DPIs. Let's begin. Next slide, please. So African cities, as we all know, are at a pivoting point, and AI is reshaping economies and public sector, and faster than any technology wave before. And the question is no longer if we should act, but it is how do we scale for impact, fast and responsibly. So the key elements we have seen so far is to build, connect, and to scale. So by build, we look at AI-ready public infrastructure, connectivity, open, interoperable, and approachable. Scale, turning standards into actions. So that is what we at the World Bank see. Next slide. So just to give a hint of what we've been doing recently. So as you know, in Kenya, more than 80% of the population of the workforce is informal sector until recently. Most of them were excluded from Kenya's pension system entirely. So around 15 million people were not safe at all when it came to savings. And this was when what we built with the government of Kenya, we started to look at a nationwide initiative, micro pension scheme, DPI, called KNEST. It's a national micro pension scheme run on mobile money and M-Pesa. In one tap, you contribute to the national infrastructure and not just the pilot. This is the kind of DPI the World Bank has been building to date. Next slide. So I'll just say a little bit about who we are within the World Bank. We are the Technology and Innovation Office of the World Bank. We focus on global innovation in development. We are situated in the Information Technology Solutions Vice Presidency, and we drive digital transformation across countries, regions, and sectors. We have put together over 100 plus use cases. We've deployed them across many countries. We've worked with many global practices and sectors, and our global practices which focus on different sectors and across the regions globally. And at the moment, what we do is explore frontier technologies and how we can apply that to development standards. So we look at artificial intelligence, blockchain, and digital trust. We look at spatial computing, which is AR, VR, digital twins, and we're also looking at geospatial. And now we're exploring quantum technology, the emergence of these frontier technologies. And we explore them to see how we can accelerate this development in Africa, digital development in Africa. So next slide. We don't just advise, we build and we deliver. So we use a very design approach where we explore by co-creating with the governments, and not only governments, but their other stakeholders in their ecosystem, private sector, etc. We also prototype. We do fast prototypes that we can now make decisions, help them to make the right decisions. And then we go into implementation, embedding these projects within the countries, and then we try to scale. And then within those scalable products that we choose to look at, we look at reusability across different countries. Next slide, please. So for now, I will demonstrate what it is to look at it from principles to practicality. Interoperability, the foundation of it. So next. So in this slide, we note that without these layers, there isn't any, there's nothing to scale. So you have to have these foundations in place. AI as a scale, trust, deployment, and impact. DPIs require reusable public infrastructure. You need to be thinking about AI governance, and you need to be thinking about data governance in the case in an interoperability and enterprise architecture. AI doesn't scale on top of silos. AI is, we need to be architecture first, interoperability next, governance before AI, and DPI as a platform that is reusable and not to keep rebuilding. Next slide, please. So in relation to that, we were able to work with a group. We co-created a how-to note, which helped us to design an interoperability framework. We worked closely with our governance global practice and the Lisbon Council in Portugal. We're able to write down, to look at moving from to practical cross-sectional implementation guidelines for governments that can actually be applied. This led to a council with different governments to look at how and start to apply interoperability frameworks to their own situation. At governance and operating models, it looked at data, standards, and stewardships, and it looked at the technical architecture that is needed. So under each of them, you're talking about things from data sharing, privacy, and institutional mandates, owns mandates and enforces interoperability, to looking at quality, ownership, exchange, and protocols, and then from a technical perspective, API platforms and integrated layers. Next.
John, are you with us? We seem to have lost you. Hello, John. Hello, John. We seem to have lost John. Yes, John, yes, you are back. We lost you along the way. Please proceed. Hello, John. John, can you hear me? Struggling to hear from Juan. Maybe what I would like to do, we seem to have network issues. Yana, how many slides is he left with?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, I turned off my
Because of
video.
the bandwidth issues, you may turn off your video.
Yes, I've done that. Can you hear me properly? I'll rush through the slides. We don't lose
it's clear now. It's clear now. Please proceed.
Okay. So basically, in Panama, we recently worked with the Ministry of Economics and Finance. Together, we designed a government enterprise architecture, which consisted of an operating model which was with clear governance, process, and phased implementation roadmaps. The goal of it was to align ministries across a shared infrastructure to shape from silotic solutions to integrated service delivery. And before, they had a lot of fragmented systems scattered. Each ministry it's an island of its own. And after that, a connected DPI, service applications, data infrastructure, layers, and talking to each other. Interoperability doesn't happen by accident. It is designed through architecture, governed through institutions, and enabled through platforms. That's the hinge for everything that follows. Next slide, please. So DPI access across the economic life cycle. Next slide, please. So one of the things we did was working with our governance global practices to reimagine public financial management. We partnered with governments of Pakistan and Uganda to try and solve. We sat with their financial ministries to listen to them and try and understand the challenges they had with public sector financial budgeting systems. The funds exist, but they really didn't know they didn't have transparency around it. So we worked with them to look at the to create financial visible layers, real-time dashboards, and interoperable design. And why we see this as a DPI is because at the foundation core of it, we had foundational core, we had interoperability, we had reusability, because this prototype that we were building, or we built in Pakistan, was now transferable not only across one sector, which we looked at it from the health perspective, we looked at it from the education and health sector. It was also AI ready. So we were able to repurpose the same foundational layers across two different sectors. And we saw synergies across different countries, not only in a continent, but across different continents. So we were able to repurpose the same structure and layers and foundations in multiple countries, starting with Uganda. Okay, next slide. So women entrepreneurship, data and credit platforms. This is a use case that we started off working with the government of Ethiopia to enable women entrepreneurs in financial inclusion. And we were able to build out a DPI, AI-driven DPI, that enabled women to use their data, which is their point of sale data, to assess business performance and to create the insights on productivity, cash flow, and enable digital credit, which was a credit worthiness without having to have collateral. It was also able to be linked up to the existing ecosystem layer of banks, MFIs, and to enable them with the knowledge sharing and to create entrepreneurship networks to drive supply and demand and to increase markets, turning everyday business data into intelligent financial and opportunities across without having to come out with collaterals to get loans for these women. Next slide. You already saw what we walked around with the micro pensions, KNES. So this was originally started as a combination of AI and blockchain, and we were able to scale that up. Now it's actually a working system in Kenya. We talked about it earlier, so I wouldn't go into this in detail. Next slide, please. So here we're looking at from algorithms to opportune DPIs. This is in the area of job sector and helping to scale, create jobs and to scale the workforce in Africa. So we worked with the government's youth employment services to create psychometrics and CV matching application to help test out the talents and skills that were available in South Africa, and we were able to drive that to match them to potential job sectors within South Africa. And then with that matching, also be able to, on the skill sets, able to identify what skills they require to train in and the type of jobs that they would like to participate in. That was now expanded to include entrepreneurship. So allowing also youths to understand their skill sets, and if they were looking towards entrepreneurship, giving them access to the mentorship, the coaching, the funding that they need to be able to generate these new enterprises and upskill in the process. The opportunity was to to start to build a new class of private sector, pull in the right investment and funding, and work closely with the government and private sector to understand what jobs are needed, what jobs can be created, and how to skill the right workforce, especially in the youth population, together, creating a triangle ecosystem that looks at funding, it looks at human capital, and it looks at resources. Next slide. Recently working on this is where we're looking at a regional innovation platform, which is regional DPI, where we've worked with nine of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean states. They wanted to connect, to have the ability to generate a connected knowledge, technology, and innovation ecosystem that allowed them to share regional opportunities, ideas, etc., while working with ecosystem of students across the 9 countries, entrepreneurs, investors worldwide, and also accessing the diaspora and governments. They wanted to have an ecosystem of of all these different stakeholders working from a platform and contributing to that, and contributing to a much more interoperable or integrated innovation ecosystem that will attract not only jobs, ideas, education, private sector, etc. This model, after creating it, has been highly reusable model. It moves from country by country to regional platforms. So in Africa was to East Africa. We see this as a way of not only aligning to job creation and enterprise creation at a regional level in Africa. Regional and national and regional level, creating opportunities for work and social interactions between different countries and economical. Next slide. Again, looking at it from a climate DPI, so global carbon markets. This is where we've been working on a unified platform to enable governments, regulators, and practitioners to model, test, and learn about emissions trading systems and how to trade in carbon emissions across, to understand how it works and how to calculate carbon emissions. This is an open source tool that allows every government to come down and trade, to actively use this platform and look at how simulating different trades, and eventually looking to expand this platform into actually carrying out trades. So again, it looks at reusability, trust, and interoperability across different countries and governments, and standardization of some of the policies and procedures that exist in this market space. Next slide. So when we look at our portfolio, and this is just a few of the many, many things we're doing across the globe when it comes to digital public infrastructure and building out different use cases in different regions and different platforms. We're looking at country-led DPIs, we're looking at cross-border DPIs, and we're looking at planetary DPIs. So we look at country, regional, and global, one connected digital ecosystem. And of course, all this is pendant on laying the right foundations, having the right standards and principles. But one of our policies is that we try to prototype and get what we say fail fast and continue. So we believe in design approach, and we believe in putting on that and learning from those mistakes and reusing our successes in different countries. Next slide. So we also have learned some hard truths AI fails to scale. We've all, as we said in the beginning, it's if there's no architecture, system can't talk to each other. If there's no interoperability, silos stay silos and nothing connects. Bad data, wrong input, wrong decisions. No AI governance, we get bias. Systems and loss of it and trust. There's no adoption and there's no scale. So scaling is not, as has been illustrated earlier, it is not a technology problem. It is a systems problem. But we get the foundation right, which is the architecture, the interoperability, the governance, and AI scales. Next slide. So beyond experimentation towards coordinated scale, we think about delivering outcomes. So we look at building AI-ready DPIs, designing for interoperability, and turning standards into action. And that's what we would like to leave you with. And thank you very much for listening to me. And we hope to work with you much more closely in the future. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Juan. Your concluding remarks, AI readiness, designing standards development. And where I'm so glad with this presentation is the fact that you've been able to synthesize the two presentations into a clear use case in the region and also elsewhere, which is something that we've been looking for, because I'm reading the questions. There have been several questions that about the use cases and why some of them are failing. And now you have been able to at least articulate that point on that. So we are a bit clear in our mind. Thank you so much. We'll contact you after the presentation, see how we can work together as a team. The last on this presentation for today is my dear sister, the Director General of Department of Communications and Data Technologies of South Africa, Nonko Belajani. Unfortunately, she's busy. She's caught up with another important meeting, so she has asked again my friend Jim Peterson to stand in for him. So Jim, if you are with us, kindly take the floor and make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isaac, and good afternoon, colleagues. It's been a really interesting afternoon, so I don't know how much I have to add. It's probably going to be more like a summary with maybe one or two additional comments. But I really appreciate what's been done here today. I think the debate around DPI has really progressed very well. And I think we are looking at some very good projects that have been implemented around the world, and especially in developing countries, which can stand as a good example for others to follow. In South Africa, we've been busy with what we call the MyMzansi project. You can find this online. It tells you all about our digital transformation roadmap. So this is really what we're trying to do in DPI. And I just wanted to reiterate at the outset, I think it's come across in nearly all of the presentations that open standards are really important. This can enable the use of open source software and also critically data interoperability. These are really essential elements. And I think without these elements, then we're not really talking about DPI, we're talking about something else. So this is really part of the definition of DPI. And the use of these elements can also then reduce vendor dependence, which can help you address legacy issues. we are looking at the more efficient use of data across governments and enhanced public services. And ultimately, we're enabling an ecosystem which is pro-innovation. It's more competitive, and especially in terms of allowing for local economic participation and innovation. So in this sense, it's really providing a route for developing countries to become more involved in software applications that are being used in their countries. In fact, I shouldn't even just say developing countries, because it's been very clear in the experiences we've had, for example, in the G20, quite a few countries were looking at DPI as part of how they view digital sovereignty going forward. So I think also one of the areas where we can benefit is by looking at how we invest in and cooperate with the open source community globally, because there are many solutions that have already been developed which are open source and therefore accessible. And we can then look at developing services that are particularly relevant to our local context and needs. So I think this is some of the value add of the approach. If we're prepared to make the investment and work hard, I think the benefits are very real. We've spoken about some of the big enablers already, like digital identities. This is one of the biggest elements of DPI, and the benefits go right across all public services. Similarly with digital payment systems, I think, in fact, both of these elements, they go across public services, yes, but also publicly for the private sector services, these elements are also very beneficial. And managing data exchange, having data exchange systems, I think all of these can benefit us. I think one of the challenges for government is, I think one or two people did mention this, but you have a historical problem or approach of government silos, and you really need to try and break these so that you can have good cooperation across different government departments in terms of providing these services. And really, it starts with agreeing to have this common approach of open standards and data interoperability, and then looking at how we can develop solutions. But there are many opportunities, I think, in terms of public services, transport, health, education. It's really any kind of public-facing enterprise and government, I would imagine, has potentially huge benefits from digital public infrastructure. I think apart from the government silos or that kind of mentality, the other challenge that colleagues have raised is legacy systems. We all have this. I mean, most of our people are trained in proprietary software to assist us in proprietary solutions. So you're talking really about the need to reskill, and not only in the public sector, but also to encourage the development of an open source kind of community that can work with governments and work with other open source providers around the world. So you're looking at software development as well. And I think for government, though, I think quite a few colleagues have also already mentioned the idea of integrating AI into digital public infrastructure. I think I would take the view that you invest in AI where it's going to add value, and not get caught up too much in the hype around AI, but look for the kind of tangible solutions that are affordable and beneficial, and follow that approach, integrate it from the beginning. But also, I think what's important is public sector training, because you're dealing increasingly with a number of different areas where government officials have not had that much experience previously. For example, data governance, issues around how you manage AI, for example, like not using documents that have hallucinations in them. So you need to be able to safeguard yourself. You need to be able to ensure that you follow the principles around data governance. You ensure that there's privacy in particular, but you also have to make sure that there's security of data. And and transparency and accountability in the use of data. And so there's a lot of elements. And then also you have to look at the issues around standards. And I think this would directly affect procurement and government services. So this would also be very important to make sure that, for example, public procurement at some point would have to then start building in some of these requirements like open standards and data interoperability as a first step to being able to implement DPI solutions. So I think that those elements are also important. I think from our perspective, I think what can also be very useful is to look at the kind of public value approach to investing in DPI, and thinking about, instead of just thinking about a single use case, like typically happens in investment projects, especially in physical infrastructure, the benefits are assessed along a single use case, whereas in fact, when you look at something like DPI, or in infrastructure in general for that matter, you have a range of different benefits downstream from the investment. And if we start to understand those, it would also inform how you design your digital public infrastructure. So for example, just as a very straightforward example, when you're talking about digital identity, you can immediately imagine then if you can use this online, how much time you can save your citizens in terms of accessing government services or private sector services, or opening bank accounts, or not having to go and validate documents. If you're saving people time, you're actually saving then the economy money, because people then will be spending some of that time at work. So it would be quite a huge benefit, which is not often considered when we think about these things, to the overall economy. You have a increased participation in economic activity because of DPI, because there's a range of downstream services that can take place using digital public infrastructure solutions. You can have more innovation, you have more relevant local design. Then also you can assist with digital inclusion, because you also then are increasing the use case for digital inclusion in terms of, if you're trying to understand the demand side for why citizens sometimes have access to connectivity but don't make use of it. This would help to increase the value for citizens to access those services. So it would be boosting the demand side and helping to move towards an inclusive digital economy. But of course, this is a fundamental element, because once you're investing in digital public infrastructure, you would definitely want to make sure that everybody can benefit. So digital inclusion is a very big and complex question that still needs to be addressed. And then integrated governance, these are essential elements, obviously, that I've already mentioned, including the standards. So the digital transformation of the public service, as well as more skills training generally, I think would be very important and very beneficial to DPI projects. And I think that, just to summarize now quickly, I think the funding issue, of course, this is very important. I think we're looking at it from a kind of step-by-step process. So we're looking at some of the key elements first, like digital identities and payment systems. We need to address the silos in government. We need to look at digital transformation of the public sector. And we need to look at digital inclusion and skills development. And I think lastly, on the issue of AI and languages, South Africa might not feature very highly when you look at the amount of resources that are poured into research and development of AI. But that doesn't mean to say that there are not some very notable academics across the African continent. And many of them are focused on AI and languages, African languages. And this is something that can be of direct benefit in terms of digital public infrastructure, because it'll help to enable access to public services in local languages. I think some of these computer scientists have also been included in the new UN scientific panel on AI. But hopefully they'll still have time to work on these projects, because I think they're of great value to us. So I'm just going to thank you, Chairperson. I hope that's a nice summary for the day. I couldn't compete with all of the information that was presented by colleagues, so I decided to keep it short. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Excellent insight, perspective from South Africa, and of course, the team we have gathered, and we've taken notes of everything. At least your presentation has also beefed up what the region is doing and how we've positioned ourselves, even from the point of view of the G20 perspective, the insight that you've shared with us and all that. Thank you so much. I think this will be the last thing. We have come to the Q&A session. I have seen that there have been several questions, over 20 questions, but the team expert here, Dr. Rami, so all of them have provided their perspective, their answers on the chat, the Q&A sessions. And so I wouldn't want to go there because the sessions are coming in. We don't have much time now. But I think there are some burning questions. I will ask one question each to the presenters here, and I will start with Dr. Rami. So, Dr. Rami, from your perspective, why is data public infrastructure becoming such a strategic priority for African cities and communities? And how can international standards and interoperability help Africa scale trusted, inclusive, and resilient data transformation, not only regionally, but as a model for the world? But we saw that in your presentation, but we needed you to provide some clear articulation on this. Please come through.
Of course, thank you very much for the question. Well, I think digital public infrastructure is becoming, strategic for African cities, because the next generation of urban development will not be driven only by roads or buildings or utilities, but actually they will be driven by the digital systems that connect people, services, data, institutions, and markets. For African cities, DPI is not simply a technological agenda. I think it's a development instrument. If you looked at it from that particular perspective, it can support inclusive access to public services, to digital identity and trusted data exchanges and interoperable payment systems, and urban service delivery and emergency response, mobility, health and education, and climate resilience, etc., etc. The strategic importance is even stronger in Africa, because many cities now, as we witness, are growing rapidly and service demand is increasing. Institutional resources are often constrained, and accordingly, DPI allows cities to leapfrog fragmented silo-based digitalization by making use of existing pillars, standardized pillars. You have cost savings, you are achieving interoperability, you are achieving tremendous operational efficiencies and operational gains. And you answered about the link to international standards. I think I addressed it. Exactly by using internationally adopted standards, you are able to prevent that each city or each ministry or each vendor build an isolated system that cannot communicate with the other part. Interoperability across platforms and jurisdictions are implemented or allowed or enabled by standards. Standards support trust, security, and privacy and resilience by design. They avoid vendors lock-in. They allow comparable performance benchmarking through common key performance indicators. They allow or support scalability from pilot projects to national and regional deployments. And Africa has the opportunity not only to adopt DPI, but also to shape shape a distinctive model, a city-centered, inclusive, multilingual, locally governed, interoperable, and aligned with sustainable development sort of deployment. If done correctly, African cities can actually become a role model for other regions to adopt because of the unique challenges available in our communities that would almost push every African citizen and company and government to innovate and provide its best in order to solve very chronic and very difficult set of challenges. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My next will be to, I have a follow-up question, but let me ask Sohib to also come in with another set of questions that I believe coming from the industry as from GSMA, the mouthpiece of the industry, there's something that we really have to understand from Sohib from your end. Building and maintaining AI-driven DPI actually requires significant capital and technical expertise that government sometimes cannot provide. What should the next generation collaboration look like between the African government, tech startup, and global organization to ensure that these platforms remain public goods rather than proprietary silos?
Thank you, Isaac, for the question. I think it reflects an opportunity as to what was the genesis of DPI, because it is the next iteration of digital transformation, but the fact that it focuses on economies and not on governments requires that this actually is an ecosystem-based level of collaboration. And the fact that the core message for this of my answer is to move from procurement to partnership. And that means, again, what I've raised in my presentation earlier is that the traditional legacy ways of doing procurement and making sure that you're going to incentivize participations and to have all of those success metrics for those systems, these are no longer compatible to have fit for AI-driven DPI. Because with those two components, because of how fast this is, traditional procurement would simply be too static and too linear. And with AI and DPI, it's quite the opposite. It's very dynamic. So the kind of collaboration that we need to get on, which is the next level of partnership, has to be at the ecosystem-based level. And that means two things. The first is that we need to understand the landscape, especially the local context, because this is absolutely fundamental to implement this infrastructure. And then to better understand the landscape's ability to innovate, and for all the different actors to meaningfully participate. And how do we then align better incentives to execute the DPI vision and the AI vision that is set by the governments? And I think from there are three key shifts from that new way of thinking, and therefore from that new way of doing. Think of it as DPI as a theory of change. So as we move from procurement to partnerships, that means that the ecosystem of all different sizes and all this tapestry and this diversity needs to be involved from the design stage, so that this vision to execution will be shaped altogether from an ecosystem point of view. And this is actually much more powerful when it comes to that implementation. And then if we shift that thinking of DPI as a platform, you make interoperable effectively by design and by default, meaning that it has to be a shared and interoperable infrastructure. And so the best way to coincide meaningful participation, whether if it's going to be with proprietary systems or open source and a different whole spectrum of all technologies out there, the whole conversation is much more technology agnostic, and APIs and open standards are some of the best enablers to be able to have that more unbiased conversation, because it actually is the middle ground as to how incentivize the participation from all these actors, because they have somehow like the know-how and the experience and the assets that can be leveraged to execute that vision. And the third lever that I'd like to also highlight is that it's not so much of a question of ownership of those DPI systems, because it calls for accountability frameworks and trust to who invests and who bears the cost and so on and so forth, but much more of a stewardship vision. So for instance, governments can really provide this environment to ensure trust and inclusion, especially of the end users. And it is really the private sector that can enable the scale and the ability to innovate. Let me give you an example. When it comes to intelligence sharing, because cybersecurity is such a shared responsibility and should definitely not be an afterthought of digital transformation, there should be a way, for instance, to make sure that every single I would say participant in that value chain can provide some experiences as to where could be some other aspects of forthcoming fraud and scams that are happen to be, because DPI is a modernization process and therefore by extent, by definition, can lead to the introductions of risks. Some of them are known, some of them are unknown. And this is why the whole UN DPI safeguards framework is definitely something that is more important than ever before. And the role of the mobile industry in this whole ecosystem is several. Without connectivity, again, you don't have DPI. SIM registration is mandated by 150 plus countries and will definitely remain to do so as identity systems are becoming much more digital and so on and so forth. So I would argue from this whole question that the risk is not private sector involvement. It's really the output, which could lead to poorly designed system. So well-designed public-private partnerships is not about locking or privatizing DPI. It's really the enabling layer to make it scalable and sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent perspective ideas for us. There's one question that I'm looking at, and I think Jim or Joan, you can answer. Any of you can answer this question, and I think this is dear to my heart. There's a question about the African continental free trade gaining momentum. The issue of interoperability is no longer just a technical preference, but an economic necessity. The question: how can AI-driven DPI facilitate cross-border data exchange and flow whilst respecting diverse national data sovereignty laws? Jim or Joan, I think the two of you are leading the pack very well about the AFTA issue. So if you can, maybe you can speak to this. Thank you.
Okay. I'll quickly speak to it because I need to drop off. So I think to answer that, there are three main blocks that we see that we suggest in the World Bank something practical where we establish shared standards. We look at these shared standards at a national level and a regional level, depending on the sector. Because most digital public infrastructure has to become national first. And then you have things like identity, payment, civil registration, and those that belong to the country and have to be sovereign. But we should also try to start to expand beyond just looking at national standards. We could actually, in some other sectors, such as the job and skill sector, we can actually build a stronger DPI if it's regional. So in terms of jobs and skills, as you saw with what we're looking at, we started to prototype in South Africa. If you have, for example, a young person in Ghana should be able to apply for an opportunity or a job opportunity in Nigeria. For example, if you have a welder that is certified in Kenya, they should be able to, their skills should be recognized in Rwanda. So we're trying to look at DPIs beyond national baselines, but starting to work within the regions to have standardized, shared and standardized standards and policies that enable things like regional labor markets. Another area which we also talked about in our slide deck, which is an example where we're looking at knowledge and innovation. And we know that right now in Africa, we need to be not only looking at the opportunities here with the youth population, there's a great opportunity to share knowledge and innovation. So like what we did with the 9 Caribbean countries, where they are not only now looking at themselves in silos, but they're coming together and saying, if we shared a similar platform, we can connect across borders, because innovation ecosystems are almost never big enough at a single country level. So this is also helping to grow that economic and development standard across the continent. We also started to see opportunities for trade. So when you look at digital trade documentation, you're looking at creating standards around that. When you look at supply chains, we've done a lot of work with building digital supply chains, traceability of different commodities from energy and extracts, where we look at lithium, greening that, looking at smart mining across that. We looked at mango supply chains, seeing how that can help local farmers not only trade within their local region, but to start local country, but to start to look beyond that. And this also is tied to identity, is tied to banking. So there's an opportunity to expand beyond those items. Here. Over back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Duan. Great perspective. Jim, you want to add something to it? 1 minute. Time is up.
Well, that's good because I can't really add a lot. But I mean, I agree with the answer, obviously. And we would be looking at ITU and R2 as well to help us develop those standards. I think as a baseline, we'd need, like, for example, standards for data sets that would be interoperable, and we can then agree, so once you've agreed the format, then you can agree what information gets shared for what purpose, and you have to then also imply security, obviously, cybersecurity elements. And I think the use towards of DPI, how it can bolster integration regionally, I think this is very clear. There have been some examples already I know in Latin America, and I think it's already started in Africa as well. So I think it's something we should build on. Most of our trade is directed away from the continent. To fully benefit from the free trade agreement, then if we start directing more trade towards each other, then it'll be more beneficial. So if we can underpin our trading systems, our payment systems, our customs, the supply chains, and digital ID and immigration elements and work permit elements, all of these are areas that we can be looking at. So I think we can benefit a lot. So I think we're relying on the expertise that we can generate through our multilateral and regional bodies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So at least this is where the time will permit us to end the Q&A session. It's already 6:30. We're supposed to even close by now, but this discussion has been very interesting. From our side, working closely with the IT, we are not going to end it. All the presentations will be posted on the event portal. So those of you who are asking of the slides, once you visit the portal, you will get there. Of course, the recommendations and then some of the questions, we will compile the questions and the answers and again put it there so that for those of you who were not able to get them clearly, you can also download the questions. ATU and ITU will continue to work. We are not ending here. We'll continue to work and try as much as possible to implement the recommendations and also some of the policy perspective ideas that have come up and see how we will support the membership, because obviously the membership are one. On that note, I would like to thank you, the presenters, Dr. Rami, Sohib, Joanna, and Jim, my friend, for your insightful presentation. You have opened our perspective. We will not end the discussion here. We'll continue to engage you anytime we need you. And then I yield back the floor to you. Then thank you. And thanks to everyone. See you again. Bye.
Thank you, Isaac, and thank you to all the speakers for their excellent insight, and many thanks to all the participants for the questions and discussions. And as we approach to the conclusion to today's webinar, we now move to the closing remarks. It's my great pleasure to invite Dr. Emmanuel Manasseh, Regional Director for Africa at the ITU, to deliver his closing remarks. Emmanuel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Yin, and I'm really grateful to all the speakers and the moderator for the great work that you have done. Indeed, this was quite informative. As we conclude the webinar on scaling impact AI-driven digital public infrastructure for Africa cities and community, it is vital to recognize the transformative potential of AI, shaping smart cities and communities across Africa. By leveraging AI technologies, we can enhance digital public infrastructure, improve service delivery, and foster sustainable growth across Africa cities and community. The ITU regional initiatives for Africa set by member states during the WTDC 25 include resilient digital infrastructure, trustworthy AI ecosystem, innovation, and sustainable funding mechanism for a digital Africa. These are the bedrocks for smart, sustainable cities and community. Distinguished colleagues, the need for a DPI brewed in an African port cannot be overstated. This will ensure that DPI solutions are tailored to the unique challenges, opportunities, and context of African cities and communities. DPI brewed in an African port can foster greater ownership, resilience, and adaptability while strengthening the capacity for homegrown expertise and promoting economic growth. Africa needs to think globally and develop locally. To achieve this, adoption of open global standard is key. My friend Rami and also my colleague from GSMA insisted on this. Almost all the speakers put more emphasis on this. ITU calls for more participation of Africa memberships in the work of the standardization. Africa should be at the table of standards making. It has been said that if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. Africa cannot afford to be on the menu. As I conclude, allow me to thank all the speakers again and participants. The insights here today underscores the importance of collaboration and innovation in harnessing AI for development. Let us continue to build on these discussions, ensuring that our efforts contribute to the digital future that is open, safe, equitable for all Africans. Thank you for your participation and commitment to advancing the impact of AI-driven solutions for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for those closing reflections. Finally, I would like to invite Dr. Rami Ahmed Fadi to share a few final words. Dr. Rami, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Yining, and thank you very much, my dear friend and colleague, Emmanuel Manasseh. Dear friend and old colleague. So final remarks from my side. I think we are now witnessing a real transformation in Africa. Africa, in my humble views, stands today at a decisive inflection point. As emphasized in this dialogue today, the question is no longer whether to adopt AI-driven digital public infrastructure, but how to scale it responsibly, inclusively, and at speed. The path forward is clear. We must move beyond fragmented pilots towards coordinated interoperable systems, beyond isolated innovation towards shared public infrastructure, and beyond technology deployment towards measurable public value for citizens and communities. And this requires three converging commitments. First, a commitment to interoperability and open standards, through ITU-T and other as well relevant SDOs working in that sphere, ensuring that Africa builds systems that are scalable, secure, and sovereign, rather than dependent and fragmented. Second, a commitment to trust by design, embedding cybersecurity, data protection, and responsible AI governance at the core of digital infrastructure, not as an afterthought. Third, a commitment to inclusion and human-based outcomes, ensuring that AI-driven DPI expands access, reduces inequality, and delivers tangible improvements in how people live, work, and interact with their cities. Africa does not need to replicate existing models. It has the opportunity to define a new paradigm of digital transformation, one that is city-centric, human-centric, and standards-driven. If we align policy, architecture, and implementation, Africa can move from experimentation to impact, from adoption to global leadership. The strategic objective is not simply to digitize cities, but to build trusted, AI-ready public infrastructure that serves as a foundation for sustainable development, economic resilience, and digital sovereignty for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rami. Dear colleagues, guests, and participants from around the world, thank you for being here today. Today's discussion has made clear that the opportunity before Africa is not simply to innovate. It is to scale that innovation responsibly, inclusively, and in solidarity. The tools exist and the frameworks are being built. The question now is how quickly and how effectively we work together to put them into practice. So on behalf of ITU and ATU, thank you once again for your active participation and your continued commitment to advancing digital transformation across Africa. Please note that the recording and all materials from today's webinar will be made available on the ITU website, and we will share the link with all registered participants. Allow me also to warmly invite you to continue this conversation at the UN Virtual World Day 2026, co-organized by ITU together with over 20 UN entities, taking place on 11 to 12 May in Geneva, with the possibility to join both in person in Geneva and remotely. This will be followed by the second Cityverse Assembly on 12 May and the meeting of ITU Study Group 20 from 11 to 21st May 2026, offering further opportunities to engage, contribute, and shape the future of digital and sustainable development. We very much look forward to your participation, and we wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and see you again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you very much and goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye.